Greetings and welcome to step 20 of our Awakening in 30 Steps. Today's contemplation is on the detriments of self-preoccupation. Now, just by way of review, we have begun to integrate two discrete compassion training methodologies. The 7-step cause and effect method attributed to Asanga is being combined or fused with the 4-fold exchange of self and other methodology attributed to Shantideva. Now, that is not an arbitrary fusion. That is one that comes from Lama Tsongkhapa, who really combined these two, saw that they were wonderful and powerful and potent on their own, but then determined that in combination, fused together strategically, even more powerful as a unity. And so he fused those 7 and 4 into what's called an 11-point synthesis. Now, those of you that are completely unfamiliar with this, don't worry about it. This is mainly just to orient the people who may have been on the contemplative studies program, or people who have studied Lam Rim and recognize some of these points, but then may be wondering, oh wait, I'm kind of expecting another point here, but now I see one from another list. Indeed, these lists have been combined very strategically, not by me, but by Lama Tsongkhapa. So just maybe it's worth reflecting and reviewing now. We started our Bodhisattva training, or training in compassion, with the equanimity practice. And that equanimity step was really, we're calling it balanced social sensitivity, training ourselves to not just react in the default mode of clinging to loved ones, being repulsed by unloved ones, and being disinterested with strangers, but really over the long haul trying to develop unconditional love, a universal compassion, and genuine interest. And then from there we started the first 3 steps attributed to Asanga in the 7-step cause and effect methods. And those 3 steps were to recognize all living beings as the kind mother, and then to remember their kindness, and then to wish to repay their kindness. And then we moved to the other steps from Shantideva, and we started with equalize self and other in last post, and that's the first step of the 4-fold exchange of self and other attributed to Shantideva. So we will continue with Shantideva now, and in today's post is contemplate the detriments of altruism. So big, deep dive into the fundamental cause of suffering here. And it's very interesting, it will feel like an energetic shift, that we were kind of very much emotionally working with our heart and learning how to become tender. And now Shantideva is asking us to really do a deep dive, an exploratory investigation as to what the real root causes of suffering. And so it is analytic. And so this is the wonderful thing about these multi or interdisciplinary training regimens. It is combining, stitching together view and heart. View and heart. And so here's a point that's more emphasizing view. What is the origin of suffering? So if you have a garden and you're trying to cultivate your garden, you see the weeds and you just hack it at the superficial stem of the weed. We all know that the weed lingers and can corrupt the garden. And it's a very good metaphor that the real surgical analysis of the root cause of suffering needs to be done in order to fully eliminate it once and for all, so that the garden can be fully cultivated and it can flourish. The objective of the gradual path is to reach awakening. This cannot be done as long as the root cause remains intact. And of course, if it remains intact, it will obscurate, make difficult, or challenge, prohibit, prevent the full flourishing of our compassion. So anybody who's truly interested in compassion, this is the crib note, anyone who's truly interested in compassion has to use their noggin as well. We need to be both left and right brain. We have to be fully integrated to have maximal impact. So let's take that deep dive, which Shantideva wants us to take. They contemplate the detriments of self-preoccupation. What is self-preoccupation? The Sanskrit word is atma graha. Atma graha. The Atma is the self, and the graha, isn't that a great word? Graha. This is a graha, the self-grasping. What do you mean self-grasping? Well, according to the Buddhist and also all the major Indian schools, we are having a hallucination. We're having a bad trip. We're dreaming. And it's not a very pretty dream. We take ourselves to be more real than we actually are. We take ourselves to be more substantial than we actually are. We take ourselves more seriously than we should. And if we're doing that to ourselves, then we're also doing it to everybody else. And if we do it to ourselves and everybody else, we're also doing it to things. We ascribe more substantiality to ourselves, others, and things, and even experiences, than they actually in reality possess. It's on this basis of a substantial sense of self that we grasp at things. We cling to things. We desire and yearn things. And it's on the basis of the yearning and not getting. In other words, when our grasping or our desires are thwarted, then comes the anger. So it is a chain reaction. Now, if you look out, just like me, look into your near vicinity, look into your near past, and you look at the myriad forms of suffering, the things that you're most absolutely disgusted with, the ecological devastation, the economic divide, the racial injustice, the incidents of domestic violence. These things seem in and of themselves so enormous, but when you put them, when you start to see that they're situated side by side and that each of them have to be addressed, it can be so overwhelming. How is it that we could possibly begin to address all the various myriad forms of suffering that exist on the planet? Well, this is what Shantideva is saying. This is what the great masters are saying, all the way back down to the Buddha. Don't fight on various fronts. Fight at the root. Fight at the uproot, the mula klesha, the root affliction, and all of them will cascade like a deck of cards. Pull out the foundation and the cards will fall. And so you just use an example. The other day I was looking at Netflix and I saw the documentary on the opioid addiction, which in a way was a manufactured opioid addiction led by Big Pharma, completely aware to them. They basically got us addicted for profit. And it's the kind of thing that makes you just become so repulsed with human nature. And of course you want them to pay for it. God damn it, you want them to pay for it. And so this is the important reflection for us, is how do we account? What is the domino effect that leads people to do horrible things like that? And you can, if you don't want to take the corporate greed or the pharmaceutical greed or big agra, wherever you want to start, wherever it's most prominent and pertinent and relative and relevant to you, start there and just trace it back. You'll find anger and you'll find greed, the usual suspects. Fear, greed, and anger. They're lurking underneath the surface. You start at the top level and you go underneath and you find fear, greed, and anger. And then you can go a little further. And there you'll find atma graha, self-grasping. It's on the basis of a sense of substantiality and on the basis of othering others as substantial entities and substantiating other things that the grasping comes and the greed comes. And then when the greed and grasping isn't gratified, then the anger comes, and it comes in various forms. And this is how we have a planet that is now teetering on the edge of mass extinction with the ecological devastation and the economic divide, unprecedented in human history, and all forms of prejudice and violence. They all come from a common source, and we need not, according to the Buddhist tradition, look any further than our own backyard, underneath our own noses. That is where they're asking us to start, the digging and the excavation. If we want to find the root cause, the one ring that rules them all, the one disturbing factor, the one major affliction that drives them all, start right here. Start right here. When you start to see that we are prey to our own hallucination. This is where the lojong mind training tradition says, drive all blames into one. Don't blame other people. Don't even blame yourself. Blame this very subtle instinct in the heart that has been there since beginningless time, that crystallizes and substantializes and calcifies things or processes into things. That is the dawning, that is the origin for every permutation of suffering known to man. And so if we want to really make an impact, we can withdraw our attention from all the various fronts of disgust where we're appalled here and there, and we can bring it down to its root. And then, as a result of seeing that it's in us, as a result of seeing that it's in us, that no one's exempt, that it's in us, then you can start to revisit those guys on Wall Street and those guys in the big agra that are destroying the planet, and we get to see, oh, they're falling prey to their own hallucinations. And then you start to see everyone, since beginningless time, has fallen prey to their hallucinations and created havoc, from small, medium to large havoc as a result. And then, maybe then, we can begin to feel some level of compassion, which is not mamby-pamby, cry on my shoulder compassion, which is the genuine wish that people could wake up. People could wake up. I wish that people could wake up from the hallucination. Very hard. This is black belt level. Anybody that wanted to be an altruist or a bodhisattva, once you get into these trainings and you recognize what is really being asked of us, maybe you have second thoughts. Maybe compassion sounds nice, but it certainly is not easy. Certainly it will take many, many, many years, if not lifetimes, to fully actualize it. But thank God we're all on the path together. We're trying. At least we're trying. So today's contemplation, 20 of the 30 steps to awakening, is to contemplate the detriments of self-preoccupation and start to see what it would be like to take on the suffering of others by way of compassion. Start to see that people are suffering, and we're suffering, all because of the same root, the mula, klesha, the atma, graha, the grasping of self. Very powerful. Very powerful. Not easy, but very, very powerful. It's not to excuse the people in the pharmaceutical industry that knowingly did this. But in an infinite life perspective, we can't dismiss them, cut them out. We're forever going to be with them. We have to wish and help support a re-education of all human beings so that the root affliction within all of us will be eliminated. That is the true vision. The educational movement of the Buddhaverse is to help support the re-education, the realignment, the waking up from the nightmare of every living being in order to quell the disturbances and the afflictions and the assault that it generates. Today, step 20, contemplate the detriments of self-preoccupation in order to generate love and compassion. All best wishes.